Section 2 is going to deal with sources of law and practice for UK taxation. When we're looking at sources of law, there are three main areas, and the one that is the most important is the tax legislation itself. Now, there are many different legislative acts that relate to UK tax. We have different legislative acts relating to all of the 7 taxes that we've looked at. So for example, many acts relate to income tax. We have different acts relating to corporation tax, capital gains tax, etc. So there is an awful lot of legislation, as you can imagine, in order to make sure that taxpayers are paying a fair amount of tax and, as we said before, to make it difficult to bend or break the rules. To support the legislation, we have statutory guidance. Now, if there was ever any discrepancy between the statutory guidance and the legislation would take precedence, but the statutory guidance is really helpful. It sets out further guidance and interpretation around the intention of that law and legislation. Our final source of law is case law. Now, case law will arise if, for example, there's some ambiguity in the legislation or a disagreement on the interpretation between HMRC and the taxpayer. In that case, they will go to court and the interpretation will be decided within that court case, and we will have case law as a result. And case law is then persuasive or sometimes binding on taxpayers and HMRC going forward. As well as sources of law, a lawful lot of guidance is provided by HMRC itself. And they do this through the website, through webinars, which are extremely useful. So those webinars can be held for advisors or for taxpayers, often on very topical issues or issues where HMRC are seeing some difficulty in interpretation. They also provide copies on their website of their manuals. Now, manuals are used within HMRC internally to help those working for HMRC interpret the legislation and interpret case law in terms of reviewing taxpayers' assessment of the tax due for a particular year or a particular period. And HMRC are very transparent in making those manuals available to tax advisors and taxpayers as well. HMRC also run extremely useful helplines. So again, both advisors and taxpayers can use those helplines to ask specific questions or get specific guidance. Extra statutory concessions, these are areas where, although not strictly within the legislation, they are concessions, are often used to make HMRC's practice a little bit more simplistic, a little bit more commercial, shall we say. And also HMRC will frequently produce briefs and guidance. Typically these will come for new areas of tax practice and legislation. And again, they are made available through the website.